Hey there, I'm Parker X. I led product and technology for a startup that did well over $50 million a year in sales. And after that, I did a bunch of different SaaS products to learn how to leverage AI. The ideas didn't work, but the execution was there. And now I'm scaling an AI services company where I help Main Street implement AI, things that actually work. So on this channel, I do a daily upload where I talk about what's going on and some strategy stuff. I answer some questions and let's just jump into it. So yeah, there's Q&A, there's some of the AI news, and you can get AI news anywhere, but this is filtered from somebody that actually builds the products. It's not that I am just this media man, a mystery man with a media company. So it should be a little bit more helpful. And I only talk about news if it's relevant or meaningful, and then some strategy and then the building. So first question came in and it was about my SaaS product that's been on hold because I've had trouble getting it to the finish line. It's a multi-agentic platform that frankly just has so many things going on in it that it makes it really hard to get it to work consistently. And if I can find how to get to YouTube Studio, there we go. Basically, the question was, hey, this map thing looks really cool. Well, have you thought about open sourcing it? So yeah, let's see, where is it? In here. Open sourcing it, it looks like a great project. So this is a good question because the open source community could be really helpful from a business perspective and a cash flow perspective to be able to get it out. I think it would be really important for me as the owner of the project to keep a hold on the quality. Obviously, everyone in OSS wants high quality, but that would kind of be the fear, is that you'd have just low quality work getting submitted. I guess there's really no downside to that. But what I wanted to do is actually put together a little research on this. It looks like it's still going through, but I prompted Gemini deep research to figure out, I'm contemplating doing this. I want to incentivize developers involved by doing a profit share. Now, this product's not out, but I think what could be really interesting longer term is taking the kind of goal-based compensation that's really popular in, obviously, sales is, fully commission, but goal-based compensation can be percentage of sales, it can be cash bonuses. But in this case, it would be, okay, if we have a metric that we're trying to raise, and in this case, it would be conversion to a subscription, how could you attribute what the developer did to conversion and have it be isolated so that you know that with some level of confidence that it is helped by the thing that they're pushing? I've had this personally kind of pitched to me as a product manager because you can get a lot of, like, you can basically like see the changes directly. So every week at Delivery Dudes, the company that I talked about at the start of the video, every single week we'd have this scorecard, and you obviously have your funnel. And the type of people that go through your funnel are either first timers, so FTUX, first time user experience, or EUX, which is existing user experience. And what we found is by basically splitting these two across all the different platforms. So you'd have a funnel for web and mobile web. You'd have a funnel for desktop. You'd have a funnel for iOS. You have a funnel for Android. All these different funnels. And each week in your scorecard, you're breaking the metrics down by the number of people that are coming in to the number of people that are accomplishing your goal. In our case, it was selling the food, getting them the food delivered. So across all of these, you'd have 8 different conversion metrics. And your job is to reduce the number of steps. So Android and iOS were clones, but you'd basically have all these steps where the top of the funnel was login /sign up. for a first timer. So you want to make sure they're getting in there really fast. And then you'd have the uh, basically like a home screen. So home would be something like this where you have them logged in, but you're not quite sure where they are. So you need to be able to get their location data. But if they don't do that, then you're kind of out of luck. So it's like, how do you get them to do that so that they can get the best suggestions? You also have to make sure that you can show them stuff in case they haven't typed it in. So you kind of have like these dummy datas of some like featured restaurants and whatnot. But you'd have the homepage, and then after that, you have the restaurants page. After the restaurants page, it's the menu page. After the menu page, it's the cart. After the cart, it's the checkout. And then you might find that, oh, we split test something with checkout 2 because checkout 1 has no payment details on it. It's just address book, and then checkout 2. And so you have all these steps, right? So for a first timer, you'd have 4, 5, 6, 7 steps. And this same thing would apply to all the different funnels. A existing user experience would have obviously less steps. But let's say like 10,000 people are coming in, and this applies to the open source thing and the profit share that I'm kind of interested in just ideating on. But if 10,000 people come into your Android app and they're first timers and only 1,000 get through, that'd actually be awesome, right? You'd have a 10% conversion rate. What we found across mobile was it was somewhere in the camp of like 10 to 15%. And then you're doing this across a week. So, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And it just is that average. So we know that in the food delivery space and also in rideshare that you always see a big spike towards the latter part of the week, and then it comes back down. And the lunch business for businesses and corpo business is kind of the stuff that like keeps you running in here at Steady Eddies because they're running it on someone else's credit card. But that's an interesting aside, just so you guys kind of understand where my head is at, because every week, as the person that owned all these metrics, you get together with an executive team and then you have an owner column. So just say Parker like 10 times. And then you'd have, week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4, week 5 across 52. And you'd get this trend line where it's like, oh, did it go up? Oh, did it get down? But an example of this would be if Parker gets it on the one that generates the most amount of cash, the one that's the most important to the business. Let's call it iOS, because I think we did like half our revenue on that. If we could move iOS 2 points, 2%, not 2 points, but 2%, then what would that mean to the bottom line? How much is that going up? So that's just something that I haven't seen in SaaS. I think it's probably because the majority of SaaS companies are venture backed. So the incentive structure just isn't in line with something that you could do here. But that'd probably be one of the stick ups is like, VC prevents creative incentives, especially around profit. And then I think the second one would just be attribution. So if you had more than one going at a time, or you had one go in, but it had nothing to do with the actual effect that it had on the business because some other thing happened, that might be what prevents it. But I think this would be worth testing, and at least at minimum, it keeps me interested in the idea of making it OSS. So to answer your question, yes, I think that this would be an open source piece of software. I needed a little bit more thinking on it. It would definitely move things forward. It looks like our results just came back from the deep research that I had. So evaluating the open source transition and incentive structures for an AI powered SaaS product. And again, I just gave it a prompt that basically says, I'm contemplating doing this. Here's a 1-pager about what the thing is. And then I said, I need to find some examples of successful open source technologies and give me 10 examples with their origin stories, founders, go-to-market strategy, pricing, struggles, niche. So I automatically see Linux. Okay, so prospect of transitioning a proprietary SaaS product focused on goal setting and personal development through an AI coach to an open source model presents a unique opportunity for innovation, community engagement. That's a big one too. I think that community engagement alone is worth doing open source because it goes into this macro trend that's going on where as like let's take 2000, we have 2010, 2020, 2030, and let's say the left or the y-axis is the cost to develop software, right? So if we take this and we just plot the trend that's going on, it's just been crazy, right? Like you can also look at the salaries. So I'll do salaries as well. Salaries. And the salaries really just this is going to be correct from a pattern, but obviously I'm not going to put numbers on here because we have a dual axis. But the salaries go up and up and up and up and up and up and up, and then we have zero interest rate phenomenon, and it gets to like Q3 of 2021. We kind of hit this local maximum, or we hit this like peak, and then it slowly started to come down. And I think it's just going to continue to do that in terms of salary, and then we'll find some comfortable number because the job will change for coders, and then that will stay there. And the amount of basically the cost for development was very, very high, and then it's slowly come down, and it's fighting against the salaries, but there's something going on where the people that were high salaried are worth it because they're getting more leverage out of the tools and the technologies and the libraries and abstractions. But I think that cost to develop software is just going to plummet. So point being is that as software becomes more deflated in its cost, and it becomes more of a trend where if you're a company and you need to get Salesforce, well, you may think twice. Like we were a company doing 50 million a year, and when I went to get Salesforce, they wanted 30K implementation. They wanted more money than you could ever imagine just to have a basic SaaS. So we ended up rolling our own. And we rolled our own CRM with a bootstrap budget. We did it in a few months. And that was around here. So that trend is definitely going to go crazy where people will roll their own stuff. There's going to be lots of niche specific / boutique software that solves very, very specific use cases. So I think that as this trend goes on, then the other trend that's going to go on, if we thought about just the power of, let's call it brand, which is community, the importance of brand / community has always been important, right? But it's just going to go wild. I think it's going to go parabolic because it will be what differentiates it. It's really deodorant is a commodity, but people that have a really strong brand and they speak to the audience of, oh, you don't want aluminum in your armpits. They're the ones that win because they've branded around that. They've told a story around that for a really, really long time. So I think community and OSS is going to be such a game changer. So I've kind of talked myself into it. Let's take a look back here. So community engagement, this report analyzes the landscape. Let's see. Let's look at some of the examples. Is there anything else? Particular focus on the challenges of implementing a profit sharing based model. Work on conversion rates. It might not always be conversion rates, but that's just the most obvious one that I think of. You could also do a model of a price per feature and just make it dead simple with small, medium, large t-shirt sizes as they do in Agile. So we have Linux, obviously. They did organic growth through developer adoption. It's free. They monetize via distribution and support services. Don't know what that means on the first one. There was some nerd battles. It's foundational OS. So these ones, I want to find one. Okay, how about WordPress? It's a little bit more similar. Free, open source. big community of themes and plugins. WordPress might be a good comparison because WordPress basically like it's kind of like a puzzle piece of like a not maybe not puzzle, but like if you had WordPress, the value that it has is obviously like ease of use, but then the customizability with themes and plugins, extensions, all of these things allow it to then easily connect to all these other services, whether it's like CRM or a CMS that you like more. But that's what makes WordPress really helpful for people is they can connect it to all their stuff really easily. Like my 78-year-old dad has a WordPress site and he's like, oh, I can figure it out. So it connects to all the stuff. It's usually like bi-directional. And then if you ever wanted to leave this thing, like that's going to be a huge pain in the butt. You already have all this stuff on it. There's entire companies that just focus on migrating away. That makes it really hard to move. So I think the comparison would be with Map. If you're unaware, it's basically a 5-in-1 productivity suite for become the best version of yourself. So you would have your notes, all the daily drivers. You have to-do/products or projects. You have your health dashboard, which I believe needs to be in front and center in the stuff that you're looking at every day. Otherwise, you won't think to open that app that's gathering dust. You have your calendar. And then you kind of have all these little like sub agents within here. So maybe an editor, summarizer, you have your prompts, you have the things that you are naturally doing, like whatever task that you do in one of these manually has its own agent. And the problem that I had when I was doing this before was that it's just so many agents that are working in unison that all ladder up to this one that's like, future/peak Parker, like that ideal version, that it made it really challenging to kind of orchestrate all these things. But how it ties to the WordPress analogy is that you have this going on, this big old piece of software, and there's a bunch of third parties that you want to be able to connect it to because you'd have this operating system of your life going on. But guess what? Like, I want to have Whoop plugged in to the health. And I rolled that myself. That's fine. But then, I want to have Apple Health done as well. It's like, okay, well, we need that one. Okay, got it. And then it's like, oh, wait, no, Aura. What about Aura? What about Strava? Have you thought about getting a Garmin? And that same thing can be said for basically everything else in here, right? So this could be kind of the bread and butter for what OSS folks could start with is something that is just connectors. And then if that does work, then we gain some confidence in the model. We feel like it's good. And then you can start doing actual like core feature development because these are all pretty useless independently. Like I don't think they're generational companies, but I think together they're really powerful. But getting that off the ground is a challenge. Cool. So thanks for the question. Next up is some news. So not a lot, but the kind of core concept here is that China keeps releasing stuff that's better than ours. So Baidu, this was a company that I was watching maybe like 10 years ago because what I found when I was designing a lot of e-commerce stuff, like we're selling food, but it's basically e-commerce. You're doing commerce via food, was I'd look at the most popular website lists in the commerce category globally. And Baidu was on there. Like, I don't know how. I don't even know if they are e-commerce. I think they've pivoted or something, but maybe they were a search engine. But the long story short is I came across this company and you can just see that like they just ship, right? So they launched this thing, Ernie, which you can't even use. If I went to the website right now, I'd have to do a Google Translate on page. And then the translation between Cantonese and English is rough. Like I played around with it last night. But the point is that they just released something that's on par with GPT 4.5, which just came out, but it's 99% cheaper. So curious to see how the stock market's gonna look tomorrow when the world wakes up. But the last time this happened, I think there was like a $600 billion crash or deletion of market on the Monday following the DeepSeek R1 launch. And the reason that happens is because the top, I believe it's something like if we think about kind of market distribution, if you have this big old blob that represents the S&P 500, which if you're not familiar, it's a basket or an index of the top 500 companies in the US. And so if you look at this, I'd say that the Mag 7, which is the big tech stocks, they make up, I believe, it's something like 80%. I don't want to necessarily look that up. I could, but it's like something like this, where it's like those companies represent the vast majority of the market in its entirety. And what's interesting about that is those Mag 7 companies are all pitching this story of AI hype, right? So the question is like, does this mean, you know, that it's necessarily true that these companies are worth less money, that their market cap is worth less when someone comes in and totally changes things up? Because one of the big ones in there is Microsoft, like $2 trillion company, and they had a deep partnership with OpenAI. You look at the other ones like Meta and what they've spoken a lot about, they pivoted heavily into using Llama and all these models, and they're open source, but they're way worse than OpenAI from basically every perspective, maybe not image gen. But when OpenAI says it takes, billions and billions of dollars to be able to build the, GPT-4, and then a company out of China comes along and they're just like, I don't even know if that looks like a flag at all. But if you have the US over here and it costs us like $80 billion in 7 years to get it done, and then they come out and they're like, okay, it's going to be 6 million and it's going to take us maybe 6 months part time. Like that just totally boggles the minds of every single investor. So then what you see is just like typically if you have, let's call it day zero, and we'll flag this. That's a flag, apparently. We'll flag this as an event where DeepSeek launch. And you could just take this and say like any big Chinese launch. It's typically like if this was launched then and the market reacts like 3 business days after, right? So let's say like the normal, if the price is steady, then it typically goes like this, just a big dip. And then maybe on the 4th or 5th or even 6th day after, you have another event that happens, which is a news cycle of all of the investors getting on news shows and saying, oh, this is not true. Like, there's no way they're lying, whatever. And, it's kind of this like recovery tour to, or even like some would call it like a smear campaign, which is kind of what's going on with another piece of news where OpenAI just basically came out and said that China bad. Like these models should not be able to do anything and they're so bad and they're state operated. Well, guess what? Like that's incredibly ironic because you're closed AI and you effed over a lot of people along the way, maybe even killed somebody. So don't demonetize me, YouTube, for telling the truth. Next up is the idea that you basically want to just focus on what won't change. So when these models get better and better and better, you need to ask the question of like what won't change over time such that you can be positioned to win. So this is a really good question to ask, and it's what Jeff Bezos said. So he looked at Amazon, and if we look at Amazon in 2000, that's when they kind of got things going. But he asked the question, like first of all, he saw this trend that was going on. So he said, internet growth is going bananas, is going up and right. And that's the thesis for why he quit his job on Wall Street, which I feel is really similar to what I'm doing right now, where AI is going bananas. Main Street has no idea about it. I need to be a part of this full time. Like this has to be a thing. But he basically said, internet growth is going bananas. It's something I need to invest my life into. And it will change every single day, but like the technologies and the pace, the Moore's law, like it's gonna go crazy. But won't change if he's selling books to start is customers over the long haul will always want the following. So what won't change? They will always want lower prices. They will always want faster delivery times, faster shipping times. They will always want more selection. So these guiding principles brought him from being the most tumultuous, crazy, fast changing, grounds moving every single day environment to making it so that I can order these markers from Amazon Basics for, 15 cents or whatever and get them tomorrow in the morning if I want. So those same principles apply to where we are right now and drive what I'm doing with these videos by putting little internet trees, little statues on the internet that will live forever. Is what won't change is people, like, basically what won't change in AI era, what won't change in the AI era is people like doing business with people they like. That is a fundamental truth. So in my case, you're selling services, if you're selling software, if you're selling anything, you're much, much more likely to do the business with the people that like you. And it'll also, on your side, person, the vendor, the seller of whatever product or service, it'll make it far more pleasant and enjoyable because it's not an uphill battle. Because there's something going on with these videos that I'm doing now, and it's called the parasocial relationship. So I don't know you, but you know me. When you reach out, you know how I think. So I think that this becomes more important that you are able to be human, you're able to connect. So we know that people will always continue to like doing business with people that they like. They'll prefer it. They'll actually take a hit on the service. They'll pay more. They'll do all sorts of things to do business with the people that they like. Another thing that will not change is businesses will always buy something that either saves them time. So the businesses buy things that either A, save time, B, save them money, C, sell more stuff. So you either are saving, you're making, or you are getting them their time back. Now, one thing I will say, and this is what I want to lean into in the services, is you have more leverage as a seller of a product or service if you're close to the money. And so if you're just focused on cost savings, you can only save so much as is relative to your total operating cost, like COGS. You can only save so much. Whereas there's much more leverage in selling more, right? And that's this other Bezos quote where he talks about baseball. He's like, the coolest thing about business, and we're going to draw a little baseball field, is when it comes to invention and it comes to selling said inventions. In baseball, you can only hit a home run that gets you 1, 2, 3, 4 runs, right? If you had loaded bases. But if you have something that you're selling that's high leverage and it's a new invention and it's likely using AI, you can run around this thing multiple times and get crazy wins. So it's exponential. So these are some of the things that I really think about whenever you start to get anxious about all the things that are changing. Like this is what I come back to is you want to be likable. You want to make sure you're leveraging the technology to do some of these things. Next up, let's talk about offer creation. We're going to do a little bit of strategy. So I started a paid community, then I turned it free. And I was wondering, well, what is it that I would even put in there? I need to open it up. But I also recognize that you're going to get a lot of like low quality people that don't engage because they don't assign a value to it. It's just another free thing. It's like if you got some free product when you're walking around outside, like you likely just go to the trash can and throw it away. But if you paid money for that same thing, you wouldn't throw it in the trash can because you have assigned value to it with your dollars. So now what I'm thinking is, okay, well, what is a good offer? And this applies to you and your business of like defining what the offer is and then defining a price. So this is just something where I'm thinking, okay, well, if I have this paid community, what are the things that I can do in it? I think it's just obviously having, let's call it like 2 posts a day about things that are working, what's not working, some sort of summary about this right here, right? So I'm doing these long form pieces of content. There's going to be an hour of content per day on a daily upload channel. I want to be able to find the most interesting tidbits in here that would be helpful for people that are trying to, it's basically for Main Street to know how to leverage AI. So I think these will be ultimately automated with a human in the loop, but some sort of like nuggets. So I promise to them that, hey, we're going to get fresh update in here. If it's not helpful, I'm not going to just spam just to post, but I'm going to try. So there is like some sort of filter there. I think probably maybe like a monthly Q&A, maybe a monthly mini course. So just a couple videos that I basically do stuff like this, except instead of posting it on YouTube, it's behind a wall. Other things in here could be the prompts library. And this is only valuable if you use the things because this is there's such a high quantity of prompts on the internet, but think about the person doing it. Are they using this to make money? Probably not. They probably are just posting it to get likes. So probably a prompt library, and then there'll be a sliding scale of pricing. So start at 19 a month, and then ladder it up to 29, ladder it up to 39, and so on. Every call it 50 members. So that's the offer I'm thinking about, and there's also pieces you can do to gamify it. So one thing I need to figure out is like on the other strategy bit with school is what does the gamification look like? What can you unlock? But it does start with these kind of core things. And then we can have one-on-one calls as an option for purchase. They'll immediately get access to 2 free courses that no one else gets, which is one is on product management and scaling a company to $50 million a year. The other one is on just like an AI 101 slash third one, I guess there are 3, is just on ChatGPT. So then I'm thinking in terms of the strategy to get folks in here and get them aware. Obviously, I'll have it in the description of every single video. But what I may end up doing is like if I have a masterclass, then there might be some sort of spot that's in here. It's like, hey, like just so you know, check this out. And then, hey, just so you know, check this thing out. And then at the end, if you want to learn more, you should go and do this. So that's what I'm thinking. I checked out this other platform. It's called WAP. And all I gained out of it was that it's like cool marketing. The product is way better in terms of the quality of it. Like the UI looks better. There's a lot of modern stuff, but the UX sucks. Like there's an ism in the UI UX world, which is I'd rather have a chair that's really comfortable to sit in and looks really bad than a chair that looks amazing but sucks to sit in. So UI is the thing that you see, UX is the thing that you feel. This product makes me feel old. It makes me feel dumb. I even talked to some people on here last night, and it just they got some work to do. There's also just the monetization side of things. Is they lean very heavily into this idea that you never would pay $99 a month for it. But it's if school's 99 a month and there's no processing fees for payment, well, it's pretty quick that you start getting hosed if you use WAP because they charge 3% plus 3%. So that's 6%, right? And so at what point do you cross the threshold that you're paying more than $99 a month? Well, it's around like $1,750. So as soon as you start making any semblance of cash, like $1,700 a month is not a lot of money at all. So it's like if you're making $21,000 off this platform annually, then you've already gone beyond what the cogs are. Not to mention that trouble or not trouble free, but that school has double the traffic. So your chances of having discoverability are much better. I also think that I'm not sure if they're VC backed, VC round. Pretty sure they are. Yeah. Okay. They raised $17 million in a seed round. They raise a lot of money. I don't think that school raised any money. So I think it's less of a risk long term to do school. Other piece of strategy is just the separation of niche by channel. So what I've committed to is this Power List by Andy Frisella, which if you're not familiar, he did 75 Hard. And this Power List just says what are the 5 key tasks that you need to do every day over the next 90 days. And one of those for me is doing this daily upload. What I'm realizing is that I talk about a couple of different things across my brand. So I talk about the AI for Main Street, which is a much larger market. And by Main Street, I mean like noobs, like the general public. I talk about AI for developers. Very different. It's still in the same niche as AI. I guess you could call AI a niche, but it's also tough because you could say health is a niche, but it's not. Like there's functional health, there's traditional Western health, there's working out, there's diet, there's all these things. So after a couple of weeks of doing some testing on this stuff, I really think these two need to be broken out where it's like the Main Street stuff would be on one channel, right? So you have the at Parker Rex is the main channel. And those types of videos, I think, would be for getting the most views. It's the widest audience. It's stuff. I'm looking at this board. It's like 5 ways to learn AI. Like that'd be much different than the developers who are like, dude, like I know this. I'm not like trying to learn this. They're going to want to learn stuff about development tactics and using AI coding tools. And then the third one is the Parker X Daily, which is just for people that want to see me building in public. It's also like a much more loyal audience that you be garnering and you get the questions. So I'm thinking about the strategy for this where it's like, okay, I've started a second channel and know that this content wouldn't work on the first one. Do I need to have a third one just to have the separation of it? It doesn't take much more operational drag because I'm just recording the same quantity of videos. It's just separating it out. But that's kind of what I'm thinking would work. And it plays into this last part that we're going to walk through, which is called the content scenarios. And what I haven't seen is anybody do a good job making a content system that doesn't produce spam. So I drew this out yesterday and I'll show you in a second, but I could apply like basically if I unlock this content pipeline where I take the long form piece of content, which this video is about 40 minutes right now. But if I can do it for each channel where I have long form go in and then it turns into, the YouTube shorts. It turns into IG Reels. It turns into TikTok. So you have it broken into those videos, and I could probably use Opus Clip, the one I'm thinking of using to begin with. And then you have the second prong, which is written. So you have blogs, and this is the one I'm focusing on. Each one of these is an automation in itself. With blogs, you have LinkedIn, you have Twitter, you have Facebook, and then you have images, video, and text, not written. And that'd be IG. That'd be, what's another one? Facebook. So some of these aren't actually represented by like the final post that you're making, but it's like I'm thinking in terms of the actual pipeline. So what are the like for images on IG, you'd need some sort of automation, and then it would come back together with the text that you have, right? So then you end up with the actual, post that's going up, or the image or the video. So I think that this is all possible as I get these systems working, and they'll definitely have like stopgaps in them where I'm like, no, don't like go forward until I take a look at the review, and that would be done through something like ClickUp. So if I look at the one yesterday, I went through this and basically broke down where was it? Yeah, all the different steps. So I made this automation. I think the video is going to go out on the dev channel, but it allows me to go into Premiere Pro right after I do this video. I will export it to a drive. The drive is being watched. The drive fires an HTTP request that then hits a post-processing audio service called Aphonic. Aphonic does two things. One is it processes the video to make it sound good and add chapter markers, a summary, the transcript from OpenAI using Whisper, and then it posts it to YouTube. And then I need that stuff because then I can use that for text. So then it stores it in Google Cloud bucket with 4 files. It'll have the HTML show notes that has markers, summary, transcript, it has the video, it has subtitles. And then ultimately it gets put into a database using just literally Google Sheets, so I can see it all there. And that Google Sheets is being watched by ClickUp, so I can know where the status of this pipeline's at. And then I use ChatGPT with prompts to basically turn those into blog posts that are written in HTML. And then that gets posted back to the database so I can see it, make sure the output looks good. And then it'll go to Supabase. There's options for other stuff. Like as I expand it, I might want to have image generation on the blog post using a Perplexity style thing with Flux 2.1. You can use a summarizer voice mod with 11 Labs where it could actually be trained on my voice. So when you go to the website, there'd be a little button at the top where it not only has the YouTube video, then it has it would have the generated image from Flux One. It'd have the YouTube video that the source materials from, and then it'd have an audio version of blog. So these are all things that are possible. It's just a matter of getting them dialed in. I do think this could be a product on its own. So I'll be the beta tester of it. I want to leverage it so that I can get these digital trees planted everywhere on the internet. And let's see. Apparently my thing doesn't want to click. But for now, it's just doing the two. And I'll end with this. So there's each of these automations that you can do with Make or N8N can be really I'm starting to learn. It's kind of like its own app where you don't see it, but it's this magical thing that's going on. And Hemingway Editor is a really popular text editor that lets you get a grade on the writing and the readability and basically the quality of the thing that you're writing. So I was able to pull together a deep research from Google on how that works. And that would just be another step. So I'm thinking a lot about like how to kind of position these automations to be a little bit more complex than just like CRUD plus AI. I think that if you could put in an actual node that has like a Lambda in it or something like that, you'd have to probably use N8N, which I found out yesterday allows for stuff like this. Like you can do shell commands in there. You can run Lambdas, which would be sick because then you would be able to get much higher quality stuff. So that is it for today. If you guys have any questions, let me know in the comments below. You can comment on here. Check out the school. It's going to be paid by the end of today. I got to do a lot of work to like let people know in there that it's going to be $19 a month. But you should check that out. If you don't want to buy anything from me, that's cool too. You can just keep getting the free value, but you should like the video. That's your way of paying me. Hope you have a good day, and I'll see you in the next one.